You think you know the whole story about the shocking murders of Tylee Ryan, J.J. Vallow, and Tammy Daybell, because we have now finished the trial. Chad Daybell was found guilty on all charges. His wife Lori Vallow was also found guilty on all charges. Between the two trials, we've learned a lot. Let's talk about the possibility that there could be additional charges coming tied to the Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow trials. And there's two types of criminals that are tied in with this case. There are the co-conspirators, and there's those who perjured themselves under oath. Let's talk about who they are and what could possibly be in their future. I brought up co-conspirators a year ago, wondering if they would face charges. Now that the trials are over, we have so much more information than we did a year ago. So let's talk about it. Before we get there, make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell so you don't miss a single shocking detail. While you're at it, leave me a comment below telling me what you think about the possibility of the co-conspirators. You think you know the whole story of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell? Think again. The shocking murders of the two children and two spouses, we know about that. But who helped them get away with it? That's what I want to talk about. Today, we will take a deep dive in the shocking cast of characters who could be next to face justice. So let's talk about the Vallow-Daybell doomsday murders. The Vallow-Daybell case just keeps getting crazier. There's zombies, portals, translated beings, but what about the people who enabled these deadly delusions? First of all, there's Alex Cox. That's Lori's brother, who is alleged to have murdered most everybody. He murdered Charles, apparently Tylee and JJ, and helped with Tammy. But he will not be facing charges. Why? Because he's dead. Now, he died of an embolism, blood clots in his lungs, and there was a very extensive autopsy done, and the coroner said he died from natural causes. A couple of days before he died, he started getting sick. It takes a while for embolisms to actually, you have symptoms beforehand. Apparently when he started to get sick, he told his then wife, Zulema Pastenes, that he thinks that Chad and Lori were setting him up to be the fall guy, which makes perfect sense because he was the fall guy. He's the one who did the majority of the murders for them. But did they have a part in his death? It's very hard to say yes. They were in Hawaii, and Alex and his wife Zulema were in Arizona when Alex started getting sick and ultimately died. So how did they do it, if they did? And that's the question of the hour. There's no link to tie those two together. There's no way to say, there's been no proof so far of anything that could mimic blood clots in the lungs. There's been some speculation that possibly malachite could cause that, and then it would look like natural causes, but there's no proof of anything. So as of now, it just goes down as natural causes. He was a truck driver. A lot of truck drivers end up with clots in their lungs. But I personally am suspicious. Why? Well, Lori's, I always get it mixed up. Her third husband, Joseph Ryan, died, and he wasn't found till much later. No autopsy was done on him. But Lori said in a podcast later that she wanted to kill him. And you can't help but wonder, with all the people that die in her wake, if somehow she figured out, she found something that would mimic blood clots. I don't know. I have to be suspicious that that's possibly what happened to Joseph Ryan. She murdered him. She obviously murdered Charles, her fourth husband. She and her fifth husband married her fifth husband's wife, children, so on, so forth. I can't help but think it is certainly the weirdest coincidence in the world, or there was foul play that we may never know. We may never know the answer to that one. But yeah, people have asked me, am I suspicious? The answer is a resounding yes. I wouldn't trust Lori with anything. I personally have even thought back to other deaths that were around Lori, like her sister, which was Melanie Pawlowski-Boudreau's mother, when she died all those years ago. I wouldn't put it past her that she was involved and that one wasn't natural causes. Well, that's just me. That doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just saying that's my speculation. Okay, so Alex, obviously, co-conspirator, he definitely would have been charged had he lived. He didn't live, so let's move on. What about Melanie Boudreau-Pawlowski? Now, Melanie has a lot of trouble in her life. She was definitely in the cult, hook, line, and sinker. She ended up being a witness in Chad's case. She wouldn't testify during Lori's. She watched the trial, so she wouldn't have to testify, but she testified during Chad's. But there is so much evidence that was brought out that she knew, based on videos, on recorded phone calls, text messages, emails, all the conversations that were happening. 100% Melanie Boudreau-Pawlowski knew way more than what she alleged in her post Lori goes to jail interviews. No doubt about it. She tried to act like there was no cult. She knew nothing. She's the innocent. And yet, we know now that is not true. Will she get charges based on what has been proven in the courts? That is the question of the hour. Do I personally think there should be charges? Yeah, I do. With at least the attempt on her husband, her then husband, Brandon Boudreau's life. She knew so much and didn't call. At what point are you accountable as a co-conspirator? That's the question of the hour. Let's talk about the other Melanie, Melanie the friend, Melanie Gibb, and her husband, David Warwick. They knew quite a bit. Will they ever be charged as co-conspirators? They were willing to talk with the police. Eventually, they lied at first. Well, Melanie lied at first, David didn't. But they certainly weren't calling the police when they were doing meaning Melanie, was doing the castings, which she knew when she was praying over people to be cast that they were supposed to die. I don't know, that whole thing. It's beyond me. Do I think she should be charged? I don't know. I'm on the fence. Some days I think yes. Some days I think, man, it's a good thing we have her testimony. Was she an idiot? Yeah. For believing all this garbage? Yeah. And for not calling attention? Yeah. But did she actually know that they were murdering, or did she think it was a religious thing? I'm torn. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear your opinion on Melanie Gibb. Okay, let's move on. There were also friends of Lori's that you could also allege were co-conspirators, like Audrey Baratiero. I mean, she knew an awful lot too. And it just seems like quite a few of these folks weren't interested in saving anybody else's lives. They didn't really break away from the cult until their lives were in danger. That always makes me wonder. But the final thing that I want to talk about today are the perjury charges that could possibly be coming. For who, you might ask? Chad's children. Garth clearly lied under oath, and he was saying that he found his mother dead on the couch. Then his story changed to accommodate all the things that didn't add up for his dear old dad. And all of a sudden, his whole entire story changed for when his mother was found how she was found, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Everything changed to fit a narrative that would make his dad appear innocent. But none of it added up. None of it added up. He definitely appears to have perjured himself under oath. Have there been cases when someone commits perjury? Yes, there have. And in fact, you can spend a year in jail for that if the prosecutors decide they want to go after him. I don't know. I think it's a lot harder to go after somebody who's a son, who's gone through a lot, and they're trying to protect their father, but I mean, it is a case that could happen. The one that would be harder to prove, I think, but I also believe is perjured themselves, and that is Chad's daughter, Emma, because her stories also added up to whatever it took to answer the unanswered questions about their mother's death. And so she says things that would make it appear that her dad was innocent, in my opinion. This is all my opinion. But for instance, when she's like, my mom was not well, she didn't go to the hospital, she didn't go to the doctor, there wasn't much walking in the school, she was carrying boxes that were way too heavy for her, which would then describe why she ended up with bruises on her shoulders. And the whole, I'm the one that searched the weather when Chad allegedly searched to find out what the wind was the day he was burning limbs and Tylee was buried. And then she tries to claim, I just think she definitely perjured herself. And I think it's hard to say what you would do. I mean, I would like to say I would never do that, but I think it's a harder thing when it's children, but I still can't wrap my brain around it, why you wouldn't protect your mother, but it seems to be a common occurrence. But to go to the extreme of perjuring, coming up with blatant lies to try to get your father off, that's rough. Then you've got unanswered questions that surround Charles Vallow's death. I mean, we know there's no chance that was self-defense or whatever. I mean, there's definitely sinister things going around that with Lori that's been brought out during these other trials. And then Brandon Boudreau's attempted murder. I mean, let's face it, Brandon was a loose end, just like Charles was. That needed to go. One thing we know, the legal system can work rather slowly, and there's, not a huge hurry on these. The thing to remember is just because someone hasn't been charged yet doesn't mean they won't get charged. John Pryor kept saying that. Chad's not charged in the case against about Charles Vallow. Well, yeah, he's not charged. That doesn't mean he might possibly be charged. I want to talk about some terminology that would help to understand why it's possible that maybe some of these things could be in the future, charges that come up in the future. First of all, I want to talk about what's called the Pinkerton rule. The Pinkerton rule determines when individuals can be convicted of substantive crimes that they did not personally commit. It holds all members of conspiracies responsible for substantive crimes committed by their co-conspirators in furtherance of the conspiracy. Does any of the folks that we talked about today fall into that category in your mind? Let me know what you think. I also want to talk about what is the difference between a conspirator and an accomplice in a criminal case. Let's think about that for a minute. An accomplice is someone who knowingly and voluntarily aids, attempts to aid, or supports a crime. Definitely seems like there were some accomplices in the Vallow-Daybell trial. In contrast, a conspirator is a person who joins a scheme to do illegal conduct with one or more other people. So what do you think? Do you think there's going to be future charges that are still coming with some of the co-conspirators? We know that one of the co-conspirators, Zulema Pastenes, who was married to Alex Cox, was given immunity for her testimony. So that's one conspirator that will not be facing charges. But as far as I know, everyone else is up for grabs. I like to question, were other cult members involved? What did family members know? When did they know it? And did they participate in a cover-up? Then also there's the trial that will be going for Brandon Boudreaux for the attempted murder. My question is, now that we've learned so many details from the case, from witnesses and detectives and FBI agents and all the things on the text messages and phone calls, there's been so much evidence revealed that we now know more about even Charles Vallow's shooting in Arizona, the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. So even though those cases haven't happened yet, we know a lot about them because all of these cases are intertwined so much because it's all tied in with the cult, the Church of the Firstborn that Chad and Lori started together. I started doing a dive into different cases in Idaho where someone has been a co-conspirator in a murder trial or who perjured themselves about a murder trial and whether or not they face charges later on. And the answer is it does happen. Now, I'm not saying it's happened. I have not heard one way or the other if any of the co-conspirators or alleged perjurers will face charges in the future. It might be too soon to say right now, but to say that they won't or the possibility isn't out there, no, it is out there. It still could happen. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will be seeing you again soon. See ya.